Welcome to the Snot Boogie Smile Time Fun Hour. Fun Time Smile Hour. Fun Time Smile Hour. I am a host, Eric Navarro, and with me as always is another host, Mike Moran.
Another host.
I guess every time I call
I'm
you
a host.
every time I call you, you're just another host to me. Every time I call you a co-host, you decide to take a step back. You're like, whoa, co assistant
I'm a
to
host.
assistant to the host. So we are going to be talking about just one episode today. I know I promised to,
Which will be a change
week.
of pace from normal.
Yeah, exactly. From promising to and doing one. And this one we're going to talk about Game Day, which is one of my favorite episodes.
Ever or just of season one?
It's of season one. I think that there's upon my rewatch of the series, I like season 2 a lot more than I originally did. And so I think some of those episodes might now creep into my upper echelon of Wire episodes. Plus, there are select episodes from seasons 3 and 4, especially 4, that are just so unbelievably good that, like, I think Game Day still cracks the top 10, but I don't know, man. This show's really good. And it's even hard to, like, how do you pick favorite episodes when you're like, no, just the series? Can I just put that in the top 10?
Right.
Like, just the series compared to everything else in my life. My kid,
Sure.
Every bit of art that I've ever made.
Right.
This is up there in the things that mean the most to me.
Sure.
So we're going to talk about about Game Day, and it's broken up in. I told last week I made notes on this episode, but they all got lost, and instead of remaking them, I just went to the Wire Wikipedia. Last week we just used regular Wikipedia for the plot line, but now we're on the real Wire Wikipedia, which is also separated into street and police. So we'll start.
What's the difference?
Is it just as the show might posit, there isn't much difference between the street and the police.
No, I mean, what's the difference between the two wikis?
Just something to think about. No, this is a specific wiki page for The Wire. Like, the whole site is just The Wire. It is The Wire wiki.
But what makes it different than? I mean, there's on Wikipedia. There's a page for like every episode.
Yeah,
what's the difference? It just goes even more in depth.
Yeah, I think so. In this one, instead of like every single character, like minor characters have their own page and they're all linked. So anytime, like, I'm trying to remember what somebody's name is and I describe them as fat cop or as white heroin addict, their name is there and I can just click it.
Co-host.
Yeah, fair. So, like, I don't think you're on here yet. Did I? Speaking of, like, subtle changes in, I might have even mentioned it on this podcast. Did I tell you about how I accidentally found, or like years ago, a racist Wikipedia?
No.
I was looking for. Let's be careful about that. No, I was looking for some band, like some punk band.
I was looking for the best way to launch a eugenics program.
Turns out this wasn't it. Well, I was looking for some punk band. And I mixed their name up with another punk band, and the punk band I accidentally searched for was a band called Screwdriver, which is
I've read about them.
Punk band, and I was like, oh yeah, that's right. So as I was like, I wonder what information about this band is out there, and so I found their Wikipedia page, and so I click on it, and so I'm like, and there's something like really vague in the description on their Wikipedia page. And it was something along the lines of, like, it wasn't this, but it was something along the lines of, like, they're here to do what we all know needs to be done, or something like that. And then there was in that, like, line had a link, and I clicked on it, I was like, what? That's really vague. And then it led to, like, some other page, and everything looked normal, but every Wikipedia page that I clicked on, keep in mind, I still think I'm on regular Wikipedia,
Right.
had, like, a little stub at the bottom. So it would be, like, orange juice and juice made from squeeze from oranges, and it'll just be like and the very bottom it'd be like it all fed for our great leader to do what we all know needs to be done. And eventually I realized it was a cloned Wikipedia, but then some hate group just went in and, like, made changes to like
Wow.
further their agenda. But what was
Yeah.
funny was they missed some pages. So some pages were just informational articles about geometry, and others they just like heavily changed, like Jewish history and and race relations in America and all that stuff. But so there's just like a cloned, mirrored, racist version of
Wow.
Wikipedia out there somewhere.
That's funny.
Anyway,
Was it like intentionally made to like trick you into thinking it was the real Wikipedia?
maybe because maybe that was their whole like that's the smartest thing the KKK's ever done. If that's
Yeah,
what that was,
yeah.
huh, this is making a lot of sense. Geometry and racism. Who knew? All right, so we open with Stringer Bell and Avon Barksdale, and me reading apparently. Stringer and Avon, they're at a gym to kind of get. Well, this. Oh, hey, you want to know the difference between this and Wikipedia? The Wire Wikipedia says it's a high school athlete, and regular Wikipedia says it's a community college athlete.
I'm pretty sure I remember the opposing drug dealer accusing them of going to the junior college to pick up
Yep.
athletes.
Yeah. Yeah. So this Wire Wikipedia is very unreliable. I'm gonna have
Right.
to write a letter to the editor.
And
So
does it say anything about the final solution anywhere in it?
I hope not, because
Okay.
yeah, no. Oh man. So I wanted to riff with you, but then I was like, let's just keep going. So they're at the gym, and they're getting a ringer. This is like the 17th time we've seen them hanging out at a gym while people play basketball, and so they go and get they pay this coach or they bribe this coach to get to get this guy to play on their team for the annual East Baltimore West Baltimore basketball showdown that apparently shows crime does take a vacation. Everybody just goes to the game,
Right.
but it's bigger than just. Well, what's interesting about it is it's bigger than just the drug game because it's the whole like everybody in town is going to see this. And
Right.
I think it goes to show just how influential the drug game is because that's all
Yeah.
that's who's playing. It's for bragging rights of the projects, not of the drug game, of the projects. They
Right.
are like the community leaders for a big population in their area. They're the economic leaders in their area. Like it's crazy. Like
Do you think that's true in real life?
I don't know. Can you go outside your door and just like show the camera around and we can see?
Everybody's at the game. I can't.
Yeah, that's true. Is it game day? Or am I missing game day? Yeah. So I don't like. If this is based on, and they tried to base it on like. I know it's a TV show and we can't just assume everything is true, but at least in the time period where the events that this is all based on, late 80s to mid 90s, early 90s, when crack was exploding everywhere, I take a lot of this show as gospel in the sense, excuse me. Oh man, that was a weird sneeze. I take a lot of it as gospel just in knowing that they went to painstaking efforts to interview actual people involved in all these things to try to get a
Right.
feel for what it was like. And so who knows what was, I mean, the guy who they based Avon off of is just a known legendary drug kingpin in West Baltimore. And he never said no. Like the
Right.
only thing he argued about was Omar shouldn't have been gay because he said it made him look bad. Some people are just so close-minded. So like it just, yeah. So assuming that is like an accurate description of how like well, I don't know, like think about it from an outsider looking in. You're like, well, if that's the kind of money they're bringing in and that's the kind of like way of life in some of those neighborhoods, then yeah, they're like the economic leaders. And then as you'll see in later seasons, they really show how as politicians are trying to get elected in Baltimore, they really show how the churches are kind of like they're the cultural center kind of thing. They would be like the community leaders. That's what I'm trying to say. Community leaders. And so it's just really interesting to see a couple of the drug trade and the church, two institutions that essentially supplant what outside of that environment, basically supplant what politicians and what economic leaders and celebrities for that matter, like they completely supplant that as the mainstream of how people inside that environment work. It's just
Right.
really it's really interesting to kind of see that, and just how it can look like it looks like it could be a European country for all we know, or a country, whatever, a country anywhere else. Is just the culture is so it's just like in all cultures, the baseline is about the same and all the mechanics are the same. But on top, it's just like, oh, I'm now I drove 10 blocks down the road and I'm in a foreign country with different customs, different, just everything completely different. It's just interesting to see that that's right. That's literally in your neighborhood.
Hmm.
Anyway, it's enough of my sociological try to break down whatever. I'm gonna blow my nose.
I did like the quote of maybe we won. No one told us.
Yeah, maybe that's funny. Can you give context on that?
Well, it's just, just such another like I can see why these cops are so jaded,
Yeah,
it's just like how do you get motivated about like fighting against a war that you'll never ever win? Like what is the point, It's just
yeah.
kind of
Well, when you're a meathead and it allows you to keep busting heads after you like tore your ACL and get playing college football, you can. I guess maybe that's why a lot of people aren't
yeah,
attracted to the field unless they're like a little
right, right.
little unhinged. Well,
Yeah.
so yeah, and go for
The
it.
thing that this is probably like way too long of a tangent to go on, but like just quickly, it's I kind of like watching it now. I kind of how like every now and then a movie or a show will like kind of change people's worldview on things, and then like kind of change policies, and
Yeah,
uh, I wish The Wire could have been the thing that like opened up people's eyes about the war on drugs and was like the
yeah,
catalyst to change to like change that, but
yeah.
I guess it wasn't.
I mean, well, we didn't have good internet back then. Maybe, but that's once you know what's gonna happen once it's on Netflix.
Once this
That's
gets released.
yeah. This is the how insane would that be for someone who actually has like shows about TV or whatever, like talk or like TV talk shows, like Chris Hardwick. If Chris Hardwick somehow changes the world through discussing a TV show,
Right.
that would be insane. Get on that, Chris. Okay, so yeah, so Avon and Stringer bribe the coach, and the coach is like a hustler, just like everybody else, and manages to get himself a nice little bonus of
Right.
cash from them, and there's a little smile from Avon of just like this motherfucker, but he's good. Here you go for it. You know what? I appreciate the balls. So Poot later finds that Wallace is buying drugs, and I mean we kind of talked about that last week. We've got then we got our everyone's favorite trio of junkies, and I guess white guy is Johnny, and then some guy named Waylon is their third wheel, and so they see the speaker from the NA meeting, the Narcotics
Hmm.
Anonymous meeting, when Bodie is throwing out testers, the free vials of the new product, and so then Bubbles talks to. Oh no, Waylon. Sorry, Waylon's not the third guy. Waylon's the Narcotics Anonymous guy, the speaker,
Hmm.
the yeah. So he sees him and he's just like, yeah, what are you doing here? And he's like, well, my nephew, he hasn't hit bottom yet, but I'm just trying to talk him out of this, which is so interesting to me because it's like that whole NAAA culture. Like
Hmm.
on one hand, I'm not a huge fan of the higher power idea.
Yeah, me
On
neither.
another, there's a lot of wait, what?
Me neither.
Well, on the other hand, there's a lot of just speaking from a psychology point of view, a lot of the treatment stuff in those programs, like there's a good chunk of it that in psych research, not done on NA or AA, but just like the mechanisms of the treatment work for substance abuse.
Hmm.
Like that, the AA model, I guess, formed in a very different setting than the psychology model for substance abuse treatment and addiction. But like one was based in research, the other was based in trial and error, which you could
Right.
argue is research, but it's just one comes from very different perspectives. But it's so cool that they both have kind of come to the same mechanical level. But anyway, it's just so interesting that like that it forms its own culture and then ends up. But then you have like the balls on some of these guys who are like, I am an addict, but I'm gonna walk around where they're giving out free testers. I'm gonna tempt myself to the biggest degree to help someone I know that it's gonna be years before he can even help them. Do you have any thoughts on that whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I've told you, but I'm like involved in that world to some degree.
You, I assumed because of the other stuff you've told me, but I didn't want to be like, hey, Mike, so talk about it now. But yeah, is there any insight you can provide that you're comfortable talking about? I know it is anonymous, but
Yeah, no, I don't. I'm weird in that whole world because I had a really bad alcohol problem and was one of those guys that just like went completely nuts just in a few years, and got sober really young. And like I was pretty involved in AA, but like never. I don't know. I was always like pretty involved for a while, but then I kind of like realized I didn't want to be, and that I was an atheist, and that so I'm still like kind of involved. Like I think a lot of it is great. Like you're saying, it really is like pretty amazing. Like the lengths people will go to try to help each other, and the fact that the whole thing runs on people just voluntarily showing up,
yeah,
and it definitely shows you like what people are capable of doing with just without the incentive of money or government. They just
yeah,
show up and do it. But at the same time, I'm definitely not cool with a lot of the higher power stuff, and the fact that we kind of like have decided that atheists aren't allowed to get sober, even though there's no
yeah,
research to support
yeah,
that.
yeah,
But for the most part, I think it's a good thing, and like most people are cool with the fact that I'm not, going
yeah.
with it 100%.
You need an atheist version. You need a AAA, the Alcoholics Anonymous for
Right.
atheists. All right. So then Bubs is inspired and he goes to, well, I mean, who knows how much he wants to stick with it. He's inspired in the moment anyway, to
Mm.
go to his sister's place. And just from their quick interaction, it just like smells of how many times has he fucked her over in the past
Sure.
to like have that kind of interaction, like, where it's just like, no, absolutely not. But she ends up caving and lets him stay in her basement, but can't, like, do not go in the house. Don't go to the front door. You go to the back. Here's your key. You can stay there to get clean, and that's it. So later at the basketball game, I love that Prop Joe is dressed like as a coach,
Yeah.
because it's so, anytime, I don't know, I feel like I relate to that a lot because I'll be like, I want to take this seriously, and everybody
Right.
else just mocks you relentlessly.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and I love the, although the unused clipboard made me laugh really hard. Like,
Yeah,
what are
that's
you
awesome.
using that for? You don't. You're just trying to look apart. And we have a nice Luke Skywalker moment, with Poot and Bodhi explaining the game to Herc and Carver. What's
Right.
going on? Like, they're did we win the war on drugs? Because everybody's there. So they go to the game and they're watching, and they're trying to identify Avon, which, by the way, is really good police work on their end. They're
Yeah.
acting like they're just there to talk shit to the hoppers that they know so well, but they end up, they're just like, oh, why? Like the last questions, and try to figure out who Avon is based on the answers, which is really cool. And then Cinder, that's the other cop. He arrives and recognizes Avon from the old boxing photo that they have. Now I love when Prop Joe hustles Avon in the game and gets to double the bet, and then puts his ringer in. I thought that was
Yeah.
fantastic. No, it just,
I
yeah,
couldn't. I found it weird that Avon wouldn't be wise to something like that, though.
yeah, that's true. I guess because, well, I mean, honestly, that may speak to Avon being kind of out of touch with the game a little bit. I mean, we
Right.
saw that one scene where he was walking through that weird scene with the funk music and the slow down thing when he's walking through the pit, just looking around, kind of like, oh, I missed this. Like, oh, this is
Mhm.
something that was really special. I remember this. You also see him getting way more emotional. Like, Stringer Bell's actually out there, and that may explain. I know we talked about the business mentality versus the thug mentality and who gets to lead when we talked about that last week. But it also might be a sign of Stringer's out in the real world, so they may have both started out with the same mindset, and Stringer's kind of learned the limitations of what that mindset can give you when you're in the world. But Avon is still just like, everyone's telling him he's the king. Everyone's terrified of him. He knows he knows that he runs everything. He might just be like all those kings that shit. If this would be a great time for me to bust out my ancient medieval history knowledge and actually name some people, but I believe there are plenty of stories of kings who were great conquerors or great military strategists and great politicians, rose to power, and then in power ended up having such hubris over the years that they didn't actually think they were invincible, but basically thought they were invincible, let their guard down, and that's when like something that should not have taken them down did. I wonder if that ever happened or if I'm just making that up, but either way,
no, totally.
I'm pretty sure
Caligula.
Tell you what you did there, Caligula.
That's all I can think.
So anyway, so Omar Skeletor. I love Skeletor. That's a classic tale. Omar is looking for Avon and goes to Prop Joe, try to flush him out, and brings him a bunch of stuff he stole, like drugs he stole from Avon, and offers it in exchange for Avon's pager number. And so
we got to back up here though.
Okay.
Omar goes to the projects where he has like what, a $10,000 hit on him?
Yeah, which is like nothing.
And just demands a bag full of drugs and they give it to him?
Oh, that's right.
Why would he not be assassinated right there?
Well, that's always interesting to me about Omar, because there is the whole why don't you just shoot him? But I think it's the legend of. Keep in mind, like we've pretty much established that a lot of these like low-level hoppers are they're some combination of superstitious. They're not educated. They're not strategic. They're just driven by whatever they're soldiers. But they don't really have a leader who like actually leads them. And a lot of times, I would bet it's poor writing. That's always, we can always assume poor writing. But like, I would imagine in a lot of cases, the legend of Omar. I mean, you think like he's a vampire. He's a zombie. Whatever. He's the werewolf. He's the thing in the night that comes and takes people like you away if you're a hopper. And so if you think that Omar's coming, you're just like, fuck it. I don't even wanna do anything with this. I can and also if you're a hopper, it's not like you're an enforcer. The people we see getting into gunfights are enforcers. That's what they do. The hoppers are just some random kid who just is making a little bit of money by selling some drugs. They probably want no part of the violence game. And the other thing is that when they it's just so. Oh yeah, the other thing is that because Omar is so synonymous with robbing drug dealers, that if they just gave the drugs, they could go, oh yeah, he put his shotgun in my head. I wasn't looking. He took the drugs, and no one's going to be like, no, I bet you just gave him up. Yeah, no, it's the whole But trust me, I've thought of that so much. I'm like, why doesn't some random kid just like just shoot him or whatever? And it's like, because of all of these extra factors. And I would also imagine that, like, again, if you come at the king, you best not miss. Imagine taking a shot at Omar, and then it's like, and you don't finish the job. Then it's just like, So Prop Joe is in a great position, exchanges the pager number. For all he knows, it's like if Avon's gone, and I don't know, the relationship between the drug kingpins is interesting to me. But we'll get more on that as the seasons go on. So Omar finds Avon at Orlando's and gets him to answer the page using the Weebase code. And Avon is really good at realizing stuff's gone awry. It's like, this is a little bit weird. And what is it? Omar gets shot a little bit, but he's okay. And gets away. Anything else on the streets before I jump over to the Popo?
No.
Okay. Sweet. Okay, so Herc and Carver are on the scene with Prez, Sindor, and Freeman back at the office. they figure out that Weebay is going to be moving some money. Herc and Carver intercept him and they get the money and they tell him, oh yeah, you can pick it up from the state's attorney if you can tell him where it came from. And then in classic Herc and Carver fashion, or I think it's classic, I don't know if they've established this yet, they discuss about the best way to steal money from it, skim a little off the top, which I would assume isn't just something that they do. I get the feeling that it's pretty commonplace. Right. Otherwise, they wouldn't just. Yeah. I also love the fact that they could almost wordlessly. I believe this is the scene where, and correct me if I'm wrong, is this the scene where they go to say how much money's in it, and then the other one's like, shh, don't say it, they're listening. Yeah. We need to say the fake amount, and then they discuss the practical application of it, and they're like, listen, if they said the number amount on the wire, they know how much is in it, and we're going to get caught. So, like, that's the only thing that's preventing them from stealing it. It's not a moral thing to them. But then again, if you're in that job, you're in this really, like, hard job that's dangerous, and it's just drug dealer money. Like, right. What are your thoughts on the moral application of that?
Yeah, I mean, I could see how it'd be a good incentive to do your job well, you know. I mean, I don't think I personally would steal, but I don't think I'd look down my nose too much at someone who did take a little bit off the top, you know.
I think I'd want to have the partner who steals, right. and I'll turn a blind eye, and then I'll be like, give me, just put a little, you're buying drinks tonight. Is kind of how you do it. Yeah. Bill Burr, I don't know if it's his quote or I think he said it was like his brother or somebody said it. You never want to be the guy that owns the yacht. You want to be the guy that knows the guy that owns the yacht.
Right.
So you can, yeah, exactly. That's who I want my partner to be in this fictional scenario. Okay, so let's see. Okay, yeah. So they go there and bring the real amount of money back to the basement, and they listen in on Poot calling his girlfriend. And hey Mike, what's the one thing we know about Poot?
He loves that poon.
He loves that poon. That's his name. Should have been Poot. And they have a bunch of phone sex, whole mess of phone sex, and then ended up hearing something pertinent at the very end. And McNulty and Prez are like, we can't use this without justifying it. And I want to see that court scene. I want to see that court scene. Just like, no, it's totally pertinent. So then Daniels finds that the money is short, and then of course is like, hey Herc, hey Carver, go take the money out of your pockets and bring it back. And of course Herc and Carver turn on each other, and blame each other for it. And I forget who says the line, but it's something like, if I stole it, I would have told you. I'm not a horrible person. I'm very trustworthy. Yeah. I would have told you all about the money I stole. And they find it in the car, terrified, like it just fell out. And of course, who's going to believe that they didn't steal it? Which, by the way, is another thing that I think hints that people skim off the top all the time. Because if money comes up missing, it's just all right, bring it back. Yeah, you didn't get away with it, bring it back. And I don't know. And that's hard to tell if that's a morality problem with the police department, or if it's a practical issue with people stealing because they make almost no money, or if it is and on the management side of things, like with Daniels, maybe they all know, but they're like, we have bigger fish to fry. We can't go searching every cop's car for every possible bit of missing money. So McNulty and Daniels are really starting to have issues here. It's nice to know that we know they're on the same page, but the two of them are just I don't know. I can't really trust each other in that situation, or in the situation they've led up to. So McNulty says they need to extend the tap, and of course Daniels is pissed off because Daniels' supervisor does not want that to happen. And even though Daniels actually wants to do a good job on the case, so Freeman actually backs up Daniels. Because it's you have to please your bosses. You just have to, otherwise the whole thing gets shut down. Right. And it's again more of that whole practicality versus idealism. which is something I love in this show. That I don't know if we've specifically mentioned that theme, but yeah, practicality versus idealism. I think in institutions where like there's a lot of bureaucracy, I think that's so interesting, and it leads all the way up through politics and through everything really. So they end up figuring out that Barksdale owns a bunch of fronts, like a funeral parlor, a strip club, and a bunch of warehouses. So then Greggs and Freeman pick up Chardine, which is such a great stripper name, by the way. And they have her identify the body of Keisha, who's the girl who died at the party, and basically is like, that's what she is. They left her in the trash, and that's what they. Yeah. That's what you all are to them when. And I don't think. Do they know that she's with D'Angelo, or is that just a huge coincidence that works out in their favor?
I don't know. Good question. I guess not.
See, I don't think they do, and the reason why is I always do this thing where I assume I forget, but sometimes the reason I don't have that memory of them knowing that is just because it didn't happen, and I just assume that it did. So yeah, so that's like, if there ever is like a hole of like, oh, that's convenient for all of the cops, like that's one of them. But yeah, and then she moves out of D'Angelo's apartment, and he calls after her, Shawty! Shawty! For the longest time, I thought he was saying Shorty, and I was like, no, I know Shorty. Yeah, Chardine sounds like a slutty fish, because it's like sardine. Fish. Yeah, sardine mixed with stripper.
Wow, you've thought a lot about this, sir.
I did. This is a very important scene. It's very. By the way, I don't know how often. I mean, you're in the comedy world. I don't know how often you talk to college-age kids and maybe even younger. I am sick to death of everyone referring to everything they like as important. This is really important, as if it's like world-changing. But it's like the new single from All Time Low. Like, who gives a shit? And we're in Baltimore.
Relative.
If there's ever a place to, whatever. Anyway.
Those guys went to my high school, by the way.
Yeah? I wonder if you know.
Years after me.
Huh? Yeah. I'm trying to think of who else I know who went to their high school. I know that the singer of my band, I think, was from the area. I don't know. What high school did you go to?
Delaney.
Yeah, sure. I don't know why I asked. I wouldn't know. Oh, dude, I'm an idiot. So anybody who's not from, if you don't live in Baltimore, but you live near Baltimore, and someone who does not live, or at least you assume does not live anywhere near that, asks you where you're from, you say Baltimore, right? You just say whatever city you're in. You say the biggest city that's near where you live.
Sure.
Correct? Okay. Mm-hmm. Shit, I don't think you really have my back on this one. So I did that.
It's when the weird thing about Baltimore is like the county is not the city technically.
Yes.
But in most big cities, the suburbs are part of the city, which is why Baltimore is like considered smaller than most cities.
Yeah.
But it's not really that small.
Well, here's why I'm dumb, or at least have really bad luck. Somebody asked me, I was at work with clients who always tend to be from Virginia or DC, and one of the clients was like, "Oh yeah, where are you from?" And I was like, "Oh, Baltimore." And he goes, "Oh, I grew up in Baltimore. What high school did you go to?" And I was like, "Oh shit." I was like, "I'm from Ellicott City. It's a little suburb outside of Baltimore." And he goes, "Oh, you're a county boy." And I was like, "Son of a bitch." I was like, because I don't mind him knowing that. That's fine. But had I knew he was from the area, I would have just told him. Now it looks like I'm trying to be something I'm not. I was like, I was like, ugh. Anyway, hate when that happens. All right, so that's the end of that episode. We actually might have had time to talk about the next episode. Holy shit! We just do 2 episodes.
Well, why do you consider that such a pivotal one?
Because it was fun to watch people play basketball. No, because it was, it showed well, first off, it broke off from the same kind of story. We've just spent the amount of time I've spent just on this podcast discussing with you about is Daniels a good guy or not, and the McNulty and Daniels back and forth thing. The fact that for the first time in 4 episodes that wasn't the main thing was kind of big. Second, it shows it, like I made the joke about the basketball thing, but I don't know. That's like a huge. It's like when it's like the episode of The Office when they do the Dundies. They go to whatever it is, Chili's, I think, and it's the first time you see everybody outside of that element.
Right.
You see everybody outside of the pit, outside of the basement. Like it's this whole big set piece where you kind of get it turns a couple of offices or a couple of small locations into something that is much bigger than that. And it just feels like I don't know, it just felt like it was it tied a lot of things together in a way that like expanded it from, like I said, a couple sets to a whole world. It's like in an older RPGs that were like open world. I'm talking like, we're talking Final Fantasy like 7 there, around that era, where at first you're just going from one town to the next, but then eventually you get further enough in the game and it just opens up and you can travel around the whole world, and then you see that there's like all sorts of places you can go. That's what this episode was for me, was when you're no longer just on a straight line from place to place, and now that there's a much bigger world out there. It also started to kind of hint at the institutions like bribing the guy at the junior college. It also opens up the whole idea that there is an East Side drug cartel as well that is much more prominent than you might have thought. That Omar is interacting with both worlds. That like it really opens up the whole world of The Wire, and it'll keep getting bigger and bigger as the seasons go. But this was, I think, the first example of how big it could go. I wonder what and then there was Omar actually taking shots at Avon. That was a big thing. But mostly it really just was around like the world building that they were doing.
Right. So how much do you think the entire season was like nailed down before it was shot, or do you think there was some changes and improvising going on?
I don't know. I'd bet like any show they filmed a bunch of things. No. I wouldn't be surprised if it was nailed down because it's a first season and because I can't imagine like back in 2001 when they shot it, 2002, I guess, when they aired it. Oh, actually, you know what? If they're writing it, if it aired at 2002, I'm assuming fall, that would have been a year after 9/11. And there's a lot of like new 9/11 shit that got thrown in. I'm sure it was written before. I'm sure a lot of that stuff was written before 9/11 because it would have had to have been shot in late 2001, early 2012. 2002, at the absolute latest, summer 2002. And so I would imagine a lot of that stuff had been at least written beforehand. I'm sure the pilot had been written beforehand. And I think a lot of things changed, and they clearly added a lot of stuff to mention post 9/11 bureaucracy in some of those there. So yeah, to answer your question, no clue, but that's a really interesting thing to think about. All right, well, what we can do, I feel like I'm teaching a class. We have a little bit of extra time, so we can play some get to know you games. That's how selfish I am. I just said get to know me games. Anyway, yeah, sweet. Okay, well, we can just wrap this one up early. Did you have any other thoughts about the episode or the season so far? We're about to get into a pretty intense storyline starting in the next episode. So any thoughts to culminate your experience viewing this for the first time now?
No. I think I got them all out there.
No, Eric, we've talked about this for about 9 or 10 hours at this point. I think I've said what I thought. All right, sweet. Well, we will be back next week for episode, I guess, 10 and possibly 11. We'll see how that is. I think episodes 12 and 13 are ones we're just going to do single episodes on because there's a lot of stuff going down. But yeah, maybe 10 as well. So we might just do 4 more episodes. I think next week I'm going to start either next week or the week after. I'm going to start airing these. So yeah, I don't know what that means to anybody listening now other than the Ravens just picked up their first win of the season, so you can get a nice timestamp on this. Are you a football fan?
Nope.
You don't. I assume you don't watch any sports.
No sports.
Yeah, I didn't, and then in 2012, I just decided, like, out of nowhere, I think I'd maybe watched one full football game in my life, and not counting Super Bowls, but I didn't really pay attention to those. I decided, I was like, you know what? I'm going to watch the Ravens this year. I'm just going to pick. That's the one. I've never followed a team, never watched any, doesn't matter sport. And then they won the Super Bowl. And I was like, well, that's pretty sweet. And then I couldn't play Magic the Gathering anymore because it was between the money and the time commitment. I was like, I need a new really nerdy strategy game that I can do from home. And then I started playing fantasy football. And that's been what's fueling me. All right, well, anyway, enough about me. Let's talk about me. This was the Wire podcast, Snot Boogie, Fun Time Smile Hour. I'm Eric. That's Mike. You can find all these at erictries2hard.com. And Mike, give us your plugs.
Follow me on Twitter at Mike Moran Wood, WOULD. I should have a book review out in the Skeptical Inquirer right now.
Nice.
And look for me in Brightest Young Things, DC, the website. I write occasionally for them. And listen to the Digression Sessions.
Nice. And who's your latest guest? Oh, well, this is going to air in like 10 weeks. Never mind. Yeah, it's 10 weeks later. Predict it. Who's your guest in 10 weeks?
I'll probably be kicked off by then, to be honest.
Oh, is it like a Survivor type show where you have to, every episode somebody gets voted out?
Yeah. More like Lord of the Flies, I'd say.
Well, okay, yeah.
You're probably hearing this posthumously.
Oh, man. Dude, if that actually happens, then this might get some views. I think, Mike, you're going to need to... Yeah, I think... Oh, yeah, totally. I could market that. If anybody I'm involved in with a project dies, I can market that so well. You have... Oh, my God.
I think it's like you get straight A's if your roommate kills himself in college.
Yeah, I get 30 days.
I automatically puts you at number one.
Yeah, I get 15 minutes of fame if you die, and vice versa. By the way, if you can sell my death, that's fine. I would totally get it.
I wouldn't know how to post these things.
Even if you're like, oh, what? Yeah. You would not have posted. Sorry, I wasn't paying attention. I was trying to think of. I was like, what episode of South Park is it where it's Kyle and Cartman get AIDS, and Cartman figures out a way to transfer it into getting shit and going on TV. Right. And he's like, Kyle, just follow me. I got this. I can. If we ever get horrible diseases, I guarantee you we can at least get on like Craig Ferguson. Maybe is he still on there? Okay, sweet.
I don't think so. I think he's several hosts.
Well, then we can definitely get an interview. So if you want to take one for the team on this, and I don't know. No. All right, cool. Well, I will catch you later, and we will see you all next week. Peace.
All right. Thanks, Ben. Bye.